Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome to the world of a business owner, juggling a whirlwind of responsibilities 2 to 5 years into the journey. Now, envision the transformative power of a mentor guiding you towards efficiency, fostering communication skills, and setting realistic goals. This mentor is the key molding a successful, profitable, socially conscious company. Harness the power of mentorship and let your business thrive. BrainShare Business Mentors is one of the top 10 mentoring firms in the San Francisco Bay Area. Let us help you build the business of your dreams. Select your path and get started today.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. Doing business in life with a purpose, serving others, and yes, achieving success. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. We created this show for you because we want everyone to be motivated, inspired, and educated to make an impact in your world. Not the world, but in your world. And while you're listening to my awesome guest today, I want you to think about how will you serve today and what impact will you create with that service today. I want to thank my two sponsors, brainshare.us, drive business success and sustainability with BrainShare Business Mentors, where your business flourishes and your vision comes to life. Check out the link in the show notes, and pitchdb.com. Be a guest on over 3 million podcasts, speak at over 11,000 conferences, and much more. Build your thought leader platform with incredible opportunities to show who you are, and have a discount code in the show notes, or reach out to me and I'll get you an incredible deal there. With that being said, this guest I met a few weeks ago, and I tell you guys, servant's heart means you just jump on a call and bring value to each other, but get to know each other. I think we talked 5 minutes, and I think 45 minutes of the call was Notre Dame football, sports, stories, and that's what, to me, business and life is all about. Joe, welcome to the show.
Rock and roll, Steve, man. Thank you very much for having me. You know, that's what it's all about, authenticity, connecting on a deeper level. You know, this isn't just about like work. It's about like, you know, what's your whys in life?
Amen. Value. What value do you think about every time you meet somebody?
You know, when I meet people right off the bat, it's more of what matters to them. Because once I understand what matters to them, then I can actually bring some value to them or steer them. I think oftentimes people want to go right to solutions rather than trying to understand like someone's goal and their point of view.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think, how important is being a thought leader? We were kind of talking about in the green room, but tell me what your thoughts are to the audience of that and how that really works to help bring value to people.
You know, it's interesting. People use the term thought leader all the time. I've never ever thought of myself as a thought leader. I just thought of myself as like, this is who I am. I bring my authentic self every day. I've always said I leave my ego at home, right? So if you leave your ego at home at every day, when you make it about other people, right, don't make it about you later in life. You know, I always think about it in terms of sports. Think about all those role players that no one would read about in the, you know, in the stats. I mean, I'm from I live in the Boston area. And so when the Red Sox won the World Series, it was, you know, Drew Roberts, you know, stealing second base that then led the Red Sox to then taking down the Yankees and winning the World Series. I mean, now he's one of the best, you know, he's a great coach in baseball, but it was that stolen base. You know, you think about the NBA, you think about John Stockton back in the day, never won an NBA championship, but man, that dude just dished. He didn't care about himself. And so that's always my mindset is like, I want to do something for you because I want to be memorable to you and you never have to read about me.
I like that. And that leads to my thought of legacy. Everybody should be thinking about that. I think that helps bring you value and your why you had mentioned earlier. So what's legacy mean to you, and what is your potential legacy that you want to work towards?
You know, it's a thing people, I think, never really think about until they get older in life and they kind of look at mortality. And so, um, I've always looked at it from the beginning, and my legacy is just being true to who I am. And so, I was born blind. I was blind until I was 5, and so I had to go through a lot of challenges when I was younger. I got laughed at, stared at, made fun of. I was the kid who got bullied. But my dad and my mom really instilled these values in me to look at the man in the glass. So I memorized the poem, The Man in the Glass, when I was younger. I can still repeat it right now. And it's just being true to yourself, because at the end of your life, man, that's all you have. And my dad and mom would always say, all you ever have is your name. That's it. And so, do people want to read Joe Wilde in a negative way or a positive way? Because that's also a reflection on your family. And so, even when you look at it in terms of business, it's a direct correlation. Your name's correlated to your business. So,
Yeah, I like it. And you're right. I'm older. I'm thinking about a little more than you will at your age, and that's not a problem. But that's always something should be in case you back your mind. That's part of your why, your passion, desire. You're eventually going to get to those credits of what was Joe Wilde and Steve Ramona all about. What I love about you and your story, and you're so humble, Joe, is all these great people that you met. You mentioned Martha Stewart, Rupert Murdoch. How has that helped you today, meeting these people, being part of their life one way or another?
well, I always got to take a step back and just say, I've been really lucky and fortunate. And, my parents always told me that you got to put yourself in position. And if you act like you belong, you belong. And so, I went to Fordham University in the Bronx, met some great people, uh, got put in some amazing situations, things I could never have dreamt of. Um, and so sitting there and being around Muhammad Ali, I wouldn't have, that never would have happened if it wasn't for Julio Diaz, which then it lent to John Cirillo. Um, I think about being a Manny for, Nelson Peltz, right? So people have heard about him a lot lately with, Bob Iger and Disney, and thinking about, my buddy Chris Ammon, who was my college, buddy, and how like he got me connected to that. Um, and the reality is you start hearing it's like everyone helps someone else. And so, when you think of these experiences you have, I'm a big Notre Dame guy. So, you know, being around Chris Zorich, if for big Notre Damers, Domers, they would know back in the day. Rocket Ismail. Some of those guys were like my babysitters each day when my mom was going to school. And so, uh, you know, it was just, I got to see a different life. And so you put yourself in those positions. And so, overall, I've been really lucky. Again, I go back and, I want to kick myself. It's my parents.
Yeah. Well, and it's really cool because there's two ways to go with these stories. You could be humble or extremely egotistical. I know Chris Sorich and Martha Stewart. I've talked to her, who have you met type of attitude. And I just love your attitude of, hey, it was just people I met. I'm blessed. I'm lucky. And it just helped me grow.
And
Am I-
the other part of it too is people know those names, but people need to understand the name behind the guy behind the guy. So I think of my guy, John Cirillo, right? He was a college professor of mine, former PR director for Madison Square Garden and the Knicks. You know, he, I started to get to know him through Julio and Fordham Athletics. And it was, hey, do you want to work this boxing event? Then, hey, do you want to go work at a Klitschko, for the Klitschko brothers on this fight? Hey, can you help me, do this event? And I, with Muhammad Ali and Burt Sugar and, big boxers. And look, those are big names, but why don't you give John Cirillo the credit, right? Because I wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for John, and I wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Julio. Isn't that the root cause? If you want to like Six Sigma, break it down, like those are
Yep.
the people that gave me that chance. And that's why I always think it's important to give those people credit the same way that Jerry Seinfeld, when he uses and says a punchline, what's he do? He grabs the Coca-Cola and takes a sip. So if that's the case, he's giving street cred to Coke. I want to give street credit to those people.
That got you those connections. And it's interesting. It sounds like, as I learned more about your business before in the green room, how has this all helped you be where you are today with VBB?
It's don't judge a book by its cover. That's really what it boils down to. And so VBB, we're a boutique staffing agency with the digital enablers of big corporations to authentically connect people. And that's a mouthful. The reality is we leverage technology the way it's built so you can actually get to know someone. And so people are hiring and they say, well, it takes so long, or better yet, why didn't you move forward? Well, they weren't the right fit. Well, why not? Well, I don't think they fit culturally, or whatever it may be. In this case, you create the content to authentically connect those people with hiring leaders. But then, by the way, that piece of content can be used, to post on social media. And so I've really worked closely with a company called Market Scale to help create a lot of this content. And in this case, elevate people, elevate brands, reduce the time it takes to hire, and actually work with people you want to work with, have a conversation with them, and not just be the person that's on the other side of a screen and that you can sit there and click and not have to look at, but only hear.
Yeah. So you're the Joe Cirillo of your business.
John Cirillo, but yeah, it's
John,
all good.
John, I'm sorry.
No,
John.
it's all good. It's all good. I listen, when it comes to John, I always got to make sure I give him the street cred. So,
Yeah.
John was a trailblazer. I really look at it, and I learned so much from him. And then there's another guy, his name's Rick Longnecker from my hometown in Toledo, Ohio, and then lived out in New York, New Jersey. Really taught me a lot around really the core of networking and how you do it without a scorecard, and you do it because it's part of the value system of who you are. And so, like Rick, I'll give him street credit all day, every day, because it's knowing where you came from, Toledo, Ohio, giving back to Toledo, Ohio. It doesn't matter if it's the college or that I didn't go to or the high school. That's my upbringing. Just like Cirillo, part of my upbringing, Julio, part of my upbringing.
Yeah, that is so well said. It's such a great story, because never forget, because you are here today because of all those stories and journeys that you went through. With VBB, what do you think is your or somebody's biggest challenge when it comes to staffing and hiring?
The challenges are endless, okay, and that's the reality, because every company's operating model is different. They scale differently, but I think overarching, when you look at hiring, you have to look at it from the standpoint of not just we're hiring, but we're branding our company. We're branding a department. We're branding a leader. We're branding a culture. There's so many pieces to what you're doing. And so recruiting shouldn't just be a one and done thing. So when you actually, create content the right way, it elevates all of them in the same way, because it's not always with what you're saying, it's the visual. So all of a sudden, if I said $1 million and on the screen you saw a huge stack of cash that had 1,000,000,000, guarantee you're going to remember $1 million, okay? Because it's cognitive psychology. So in this case, it's really being able to use this technology, use video to help you connect with talent quicker, to be able to say, do I want to spend 8 hours with this person? How do I reduce the time to hire? You think about, I can watch a 5-minute video rather than being in a 45-minute interview. Make a quick decision, because we know that's all that it takes. Think about 40 minutes of time. How much do you get paid? Divide that by what your hourly rate is. And guess what? You just at least saved yourself probably in the realm of anywhere between, I don't know, $100 to $150 just in that short period of time in opportunity lost or cost, however you look at it, just by using the content, using the video. And that person gets to use that video throughout now. So every time they apply to a job, they can share it. If they want to post it on different platforms, they can share it. This is now about them building their brand. And at the same time, it helps to honestly elevate VBB's brand.
Video is awesome. That's what you just said in great words and very eloquently, is if you're not using video, reach out to Joe. I don't do this a lot in podcasts, but this guy gets it. And not just, hey, here's a video on my phone and I'm the great, there's technique that you do and help people with their video and branding themselves to get that good job. How important is talent for a company?
So you can look at talent in many ways. Is it talent that is coming in the door, hitting the ground running? Is it talent for the future? I don't look at it as talent. I look at it as value system. What's the value system of the person? Because at that point, does talent really matter? Right? Yeah. What do they say? What do they say? Worst talent is wasted talent. And so in that case, it's do you want to be coached and developed? Are you a forward thinker? Do you know the ways that one can learn? Can you look at yourself in a way that, can break yourself down and not be egotistical? So, look, Michael Jordan got cut in high school. Okay. That's the only example. There you go. I just got to give you that example. Michael Jordan got cut in high school. And what did he do? Right? He just came back, fought back, and became the best basketball player ever.
What's some tips can you give to candidates looking for jobs?
Be real. So many times people lost their job, whatever. They got this whole song and dance. Just be real. And at the same time, correlate what's going on in the world. So as an example, there's a lot of layoffs that happen in October, November, December. Well, why is that? Well, because when you look at the fiscal year and the calendar year, a lot of financial service companies report at the end of the year. So in this case, you got to shave off, let's just call it shave off the fat, whatever it is, because you have to appease Wall Street. So what happens? You cut at that time because you also now know that when it comes to bonuses and all these other things, you won't be paying these things out either. And again, these are things some people don't want to talk about, but if you can bring these things up in your interview and actually show that you understand and correlate things, you're demonstrating this forward thinking ability and being able to connect the dots rather than just saying, hey, I lost my job. Well, do you know why you lost your job? This isn't because of you. Okay. More than likely it's not because of you. And so if you can break this down, then you just demonstrated something that most people can't do. And so that's where it's just getting real. The other part is knowing what you can and can't do. No puffery, just be street legal about it. When I'm talking with candidates, they'll start telling me something and I'll just stop them for a moment and I'll say, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Break that down as if I have no understanding whatsoever. And then I'll just say to them, honestly, I'll say, you just said the word 7 times in 45 seconds. You don't know what you're talking about.
Interesting. That's a way. What a disqualifier.
Well, it's because you just demonstrated through the way you speak, which is all psychological too, right? Yeah, that if you actually know what you're talking about, you're not using filler words. You're just talking as if you're breathing.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to be very street legal about who you are and what you do. And the other part too, in interviews, people can't talk about or can't ask you about your personal life. But if you know how to integrate it appropriately, it's very impactful. If you did the research on the person on the other end, if you knew that they went to the University of Notre Dame, I'm obviously going to, if it's me and I'm a Notre Dame season ticket holder and Notre Dame is all about my life, I'm obviously going to bring that up at the beginning of my conversation, because what I'm going to do is be able to demonstrate some skills and things that ultimately they're actually assessing you for in your interview. And you demonstrated it without the masking. So that's where I think when it comes to interviews and what have you, demonstrate the quality rather than giving a story too.
That's $1 million tip right there. audience, if you're looking for a job, listen to that over and over. Write it down, because I never thought about it. I've done a lot of interviews myself, so I wouldn't be a guy to talk to, but
Steve,
it's
I always
logical.
think about my days at PwC. So there was a guy, Joe Keen. He was such a great guy. Looks like the big boss man from WWF, right? And so he would always say to me, he's like, Joe, man, you have the hardest interview questions, but they're the easiest, but they're so hard, right? Because I'm just asking you a question that you think about over and over and over again, but you don't actually write it down. You don't think about how you're going to answer it. And at that point, it just tells me more about how you think and how you operate, which boils down to your value system.
And you're authentic, because you're not thinking about how should I talk to Joe. It's like da 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 da
There you
da
go.
da. You go, okay, and whether it's right or wrong, whether it works or not, at least you're being authentic to the world. And
That's
in this
it.
case, this interview. So
Looking at them.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
We'll finish your thought, and I've got another question.
I was just going to say, it's just being true to the man in the glass. That's it.
Yeah. So let's flip it. Companies, and you just said, tech had a bunch of layoffs, unemployment's up. What's a tip for companies that are going, hey, I need 10 salespeople? What's a great tip for them besides hiring you, which I think is a good tip?
Hey, thanks for the promo. So it's interesting. So tech, that's it, just to be clear, it's interesting if we look at the market. And I'm not 100% accurate, but I want to say, if you were to take out like the top tech companies, the S&P 500 would be down like 2% or something, which is telling you that tech is it. You start also looking at tech sales. You start to look at everything around AI and chat GPT, all that's tech. I even look at what I do in talent acquisition. It's moving to tech. So, in that case, you start to see that industries and functions are kind of tech. I look at my clients right now. A lot of the work I'm doing is all tech related, software engineers, electrical engineers, Windows, Windows, cloud, all this stuff. It's all, and so companies are going through transformations and when you go through it, what are you looking at? You're looking at your tech stack. You're looking at how do we, you think about people, process, technology, right? So how do we look at technology to implement into our process, which then impacts our people, which then impacts our cost. So, those are the things that are going on. When you look at like companies saying, hey, I'm looking at hiring 10 people or whatever it may be. Number one, I might say, take a step back and ask yourself, why are you hiring 10 people rather than just jumping to a conclusion? Looking at how are you scaling those 10 people? When are you bringing those people in? What's the purpose? What's your pipeline? Because you don't want all these people, quote unquote, like not doing anything, if you want to call it. You also have to look at what's the onboarding cycle look like for these people, getting them trained and getting them immersed into your culture and all those other components. So it's not just like I need to go hire 10 people, but then also look at your costs. What's the cost of 10 people? What's the cost of partnering with, for example, VBB to do a retained search or a contingent search? But if you're going to hire 10 people, I would say this right off the bat, like have a mini RPO come in and do it, right? There's no point to go out there and bring us, one-off staffing company to do 10 individual 25%, 30% fees. Right. Again, I'm talking myself out of business. I'm actually just giving the guidance, which is no, bring in an RPO that comes in there and bangs it all out there. And, you have someone who hits multiple functions. You have 3-4 people that are supporting it to then reduce the time. But also when they're out there, they're fully representing your company. So your brand is fully represented in the marketplace. And so, that's part of the benefit of working with VBB is, most of my clients are people who I intimately know, people I've worked with in my past. I might have even worked at the company in my past. So I'm able to talk about like the truth of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And maybe, oh, you read this here. Okay. Do you believe that as a trustworthy source? Okay. And so, and just helping people to actually see what is truth and what's not. And so, in that case, you're hiring across the board. I mean, let's take a step back. And I think that's another value or piece of, of value that VBB adds is not just let's go out and hire. Let's actually look at your strategy. Let's look at how and why. And hey, wait, can we tie this into your conferences that you're having and going to market? Can we tie that into your internal and external communications to highlight some of your employees? Can we highlight some of your employees to talk about your culture to then now help to cross promote a position? So there's all these different ways of thinking of ultimately how you can go about doing that.
Sold. If I had a company, I'd hire you today.
Rock and roll. Hey, look, Steve, I don't know how to sell, and that's the reality. Is I only know how to do. My dad and my mom always say actions speak louder than words. So in that case, and then I'm even going to give my sister-in-law Annie. She always would tell me when I started at PwC, she's like, Joe, just put your head down, shut your mouth, and just do a great job. And it was great advice. And I think about it all the time. And it's like, just, you know what? I know at times in my career, I probably didn't follow my own advice, guilty as charged. But that's the reality. And that's all part of the things you learn in life.
Put your head down and shut up. Remember that, audience. You start.
Well, I have a hard time being quiet, and everybody who knows me knows just put a muzzle in my mouth sometimes.
Yeah, I'm with you. This podcasting has really helped with that. With that being said, this has been such a great show. We've come to the end, but how can people find you, reach out to you?
So I'm big on LinkedIn, and that's where I always, prefer people to reach out to me, because if we think about it, I'm really pushing out my content using that platform. And if you know how the platform works, then you use it to your benefit. That's great. Let LinkedIn benefit from the data and everything like that. The reality is we get to authentically connect there. And that's where people can see more about who I am, the value I bring to others. They're able to actually see more about my story, from being blind to being the youngest ever paper boy in the city of Toledo at 7, and, trading stocks at 12, and being a Jordan sneakerhead, and all those other things that you can actually learn about me. So, people say, I'll send an email, send phone. No, just connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's where I'm going to respond to you very swiftly. And we can actually authentically get to know one another.
I love it. This is a true servant's
Hey, there you go. I just gave LinkedIn like big plugs.
Oh, yeah.
And, LinkedIn,
if you're listening, I could take another sponsor. No, I'm just kidding. Half kidding. Joe, thanks again. This has been incredible. I always say this, but in a lot of my shows, like Joe's show today, he gave you some 3 or 4 incredible tips, really $1 million tips. Use the forward and reverse button. Grab that 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes and listen to it over and over. Ingratiate it into your head. Like, shut up, put your head down. I know I've said it 3 times. I'm accentuating the point, whatever that word is, because it's so important. I've learned something today. So do that. Also, don't forget about my podcast swag, Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Wear your t-shirt, hat, hoodie. Let's promote this message across the world by wearing the shirt proudly. Also, don't forget my TV show, which you're going to see Joe Wilde as a guest here soon. We'll announce that. Together We Serve, every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget, as always, me and Joe, thank you so much for listening and watching. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. See y'all.